The grand hall shimmered with golden lights, chandeliers hanging high above like glowing stars. Every corner of the room spoke of wealth, tables draped in silk cloth, crystal glasses reflecting the glow of candles, and a long carpet stretching from the entrance to the stage where a man and woman stood, smiling as if they owned the world. The man was the millionaire, a self-made success whose story many admired. He had worked hard for years, and now he stood tall in a finely tailored suit, confident, proud, and most of all in love. Beside him was his bride-to-be, a woman so striking that guests whispered about her beauty as soon as they entered the room. Her gown sparkled like diamonds. Her smile was polished and perfect together. They looked like a picture from a fairy tale. Guests clinked glasses, musicians played soft melodies, and laughter filled the air. Journalists had been invited to cover the event, and photographers snapped pictures of the happy couple under flashing lights. Everyone wanted to be near them, to shake the millionaire's hand, to compliment the bride, to feel, even for a moment, part of their glittering world. The millionaire's friends raised toasts, praising him for finding not just business success but love as well. "You deserve this happiness," one said. While another joked, "You've built empires. Now build a family." The crowd cheered, and the bride leaned closer to him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Her eyes sparkled, but there was something sharp behind them, something most people would never notice in the glow of the evening. At the back of the hall, the staff moved quietly between tables, refilling glasses and carrying trays of food. Among them was a young girl, dressed in a plain black uniform that was a size too big for her. She kept her head down, moving carefully with the tray she carried. She was there not to celebrate, not to laugh, not to drink, but to earn. For her, this was just another night of work, another way to help her struggling family. But her eyes were sharper than most. She noticed things others missed. While the guests were lost in laughter and admiration, she saw small details. The way the bride glanced at the millionaire's glass too often, the way one of the waiters seemed nervous as he approached the table, the way his hand lingered near the drink a second too long. These moments stitched together in her mind like pieces of a puzzle. The music grew louder, and the couple moved to the center stage. The millionaire lifted his glass, ready to toast the love of his life. Guests rose to their feet, raising their own glasses, voices filling the hall with cheers. "To love, to happiness, to forever," someone called out. The bride's smile widened, flawless and dazzling. The millionaire looked at her, his heart swelling with pride. He had dreamed of this day, to celebrate not just his wealth but his love. He believed in her, trusted her, adored her. To him, this was the moment when his life felt complete. But not everyone felt the same. The poor girl carrying the tray froze in her tracks. Her chest tightened as she watched the scene unfold. Something inside her screamed that this was wrong. Her instincts told her danger was hidden in that glass. The way the bride's eyes glistened was not only with joy but with anticipation, a strange kind of tension that the crowd, drunk on celebration, failed to see. The girl's heart pounded. She knew she was nothing in this room, just a servant in the background. No one would listen to her. No one would believe her, but she also knew she couldn't stay silent. Every second that passed brought the glass closer to his lips, closer to the moment she dreaded. Around her, the laughter grew. The applause echoed. The guests leaned forward, eager to hear the toast, but the girl's world slowed down, her thoughts racing. If she spoke, she could be thrown out, humiliated, accused of trying to ruin the party. But if she stayed quiet, something far worse might happen before everyone's eyes. The millionaire raised the glass higher, the golden liquid shimmering under the chandelier lights. His bride looked at him with a perfect smile, one hand resting gently on his arm. The crowd grew silent, waiting for his words. It was the perfect picture of celebration, of love and wealth united, and yet, somewhere between the glittering tables and the polished floors, a poor girl's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers trembled around the tray. She knew she had to choose, silence or courage. In that grand hall full of people blinded by luxury and joy, she was the only one who sensed the shadow hiding beneath the celebration. And as the millionaire's lips touched the rim of the glass, the moment was seconds away from changing his life forever. The hall was silent except for the clinking of glasses. The millionaire lifted his drink, smiling as he prepared to speak. His bride leaned closer, her hand brushing against his, and the guests leaned forward eagerly, waiting for the perfect toast to seal the evening. The music had softened, and all eyes were on him at the back of the room. The poor black girl carrying her tray could feel her heart pounding so hard it hurt. She saw the glass, the faint swirl at the bottom of it. The way the bride's eyes flickered with something sharp and hidden. She had been watching carefully all evening, and she knew what she had seen. Earlier, the bride had leaned toward the glass when no one else was looking. Her hand quick, her movements subtle but enough for someone with sharp eyes to notice. The girl's throat tightened. She was just a worker. Invisible in the glittering crowd, people ignored her as if she were part of the furniture. Who would believe her if she spoke? She imagined being dragged out, insulted, accused of lying, losing her only source of income for her family. The thought made her tremble, but then she looked at the millionaire, his smile genuine, his trust so open, and something inside her refused to stay quiet. Her voice broke through the stillness of the hall, trembling at first but clear. "Don't drink that," she said. The words hung in the air like thunder. Sharp and unexpected, the millionaire froze, his glass still hovering near his lips. His eyes shifted, confused, searching for the source of the voice. Guests turned sharply, their faces filled with shock. Whispers rippled across the tables, heads craning toward the back where the voice had come from. The poor girl's tray rattled in her shaking hands. But she stood tall, her eyes locked on him. "Please, don't drink that," she repeated. Louder this time, the bride's smile faltered. Her grip on the millionaire's arm tightened. Her voice came out smooth but laced with anger. "What nonsense is this?" she hissed, her eyes narrowing at the girl. "She's trying to ruin our moment. Don't listen to her." The guests gasped. Some began to murmur, "Who is she? Why would she say that?" A few laughed nervously, dismissing it as a silly scene. But others looked unsettled, sensing the fear in the girl's tone. The millionaire lowered the glass slightly, his brow furrowing. He looked from his fiancée to the trembling worker at the back. "Why are you saying this?" he asked. His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. The girl swallowed hard, her face pale but her eyes steady. Because I saw something," she whispered. "I saw her put something in your drink." The hall erupted in gasps. The bride's face turned red, her perfect smile breaking into a mask of fury. "How dare you?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. "This is a servant's lie. She's jealous. She wants attention. Throw her out." Two security guards began to move toward the girl, but the millionaire raised his hand sharply, stopping them. His eyes were fixed on her, studying her expression. Her voice shook, but her honesty was undeniable. She didn't look like someone trying to cause chaos. She looked like someone terrified but determined. The bride laughed suddenly, trying to recover her composure. "Darling, don't be ridiculous. She's making a fool of herself. Drink, and let's move on." She reached for the glass, urging him to lift it again, but he didn't. His fingers tightened around the stem of the glass. His mind spinning, he had trusted this woman completely, adored her, built dreams with her. Yet the girl's words planted a seed of doubt that refused to be ignored. The silence stretched painfully long. Guests whispered louder now, some leaning in with curiosity, others with suspicion. The poor girl stood frozen, her tray pressed against her chest like a shield, but her eyes never wavered. She had spoken the truth, even if it cost her everything. Finally, the millionaire set the glass down slowly. His eyes locked onto his bride's face, searching for something: truth, reassurance, denial. Her smile wavered again, just for a second. And in that second he saw it. A flicker of panic, quickly hidden but real. His heart thudded in his chest. He turned back to the girl, his voice steady. "Come forward," he said. The crowd gasped again. The poor girl hesitated, fear gripping her legs. But then she stepped forward, each movement slow but firm. The bride's eyes burned with rage, her perfect mask beginning to crack. She whispered harshly to him, "You don't actually believe this nonsense, do you?" "She's lying. Don't humiliate me like this in front of everyone." But the millionaire didn't answer her. His focus was on the girl who had risked everything to shout two simple words, words that could have saved his life. And as she stood before him, trembling but unbroken, the atmosphere in the hall shifted. The celebration was no longer about wealth, glamour, and love. It had become a moment of truth. A single glass of liquid, a single warning, and two women standing on opposite ends of trust. Everyone waited, breaths held to see what the millionaire would do next. The grand hall, once filled with music and laughter, now felt heavy with silence. The golden lights shimmered above, but no one was admiring them anymore. All eyes were locked on the strange scene unfolding between the millionaire, his bride-to-be, and the poor girl who had dared to shout those words. The glass of wine still sat untouched in the millionaire's hand. Its surface glistened under the chandeliers, tempting yet threatening. The poor girl's warning replayed in everyone's mind, and suddenly that glass didn't look so harmless anymore. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, some whispered, trying to make sense of the interruption. "Is she serious?" one man muttered. "Or is this some kind of drama?" Another whispered back. A woman leaned toward her husband and said in a low tone, "Why would a servant risk her job if she wasn't telling the truth?" At the center of it all, the bride's perfect smile had turned brittle. Her eyes flashed with anger as she clung to the millionaire's arm. "Darling, you can't actually be giving this nonsense a moment of thought," she said sweetly, though her voice carried a sharp edge. "She is lying to embarrass me. Look at her, she is jealous, desperate for attention. Throw her out before she ruins our celebration." Her words were quick. Almost too quick. The guests noticed the tremble in her voice, the way her hand squeezed his arm a little too tightly. She sounded less like a wronged woman and more like someone trying to control the situation. The millionaire, however, didn't respond immediately. His eyes stayed locked on the poor girl who stood a few feet away. Trembling but steady, her tray rested against her hip now. Forgotten, she looked at him with pleading eyes, her chest rising and falling with every nervous breath. She didn't look like a liar. She looked terrified but determined. The silence dragged on until finally the millionaire spoke. His voice calm but firm. "Tell me again," he said, directing his words at the girl. "What did you see?" The bride stiffened beside him, her grip tightened further. "Don't entertain her," she snapped. Her eyes darted quickly to the crowd. Aware that whispers were spreading faster now, the perfect image she had built for months was cracking. The poor girl swallowed hard, her throat dry. "I saw her," she said slowly, pointing with a trembling hand at the bride. "She leaned over your glass when no one was watching. She dropped something inside. I know what I saw." The crowd gasped, the air filled with shocked murmurs. Is this true? Could it be possible? Surely not. The hall buzzed with disbelief. The bride let out a high laugh, but it sounded forced, hollow. "This is ridiculous," she exclaimed. "You believe a servant over me?"
Your fiancé?
"Your future wife." She pulled at his arm, trying to draw his attention back to her. "She's lying. I swear on my life she's lying." But the millionaire didn't lift the glass again. His instincts, sharpened by years of business, told him something was wrong. He studied his bride closely now, the way her eyes refused to meet his. The tension in her jaw, the beads of sweat forming along her hairline despite the cool air. "Why are you so nervous?" he asked quietly. His words sliced through the hall like a blade. Her mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, her flawless mask faltered. She quickly forced a smile. "Nervous? Because you're humiliating me in front of everyone. That's why," she said sharply, but her tone only deepened the doubt in people's minds. The guests leaned closer to one another, their whispers growing bolder now. "Something isn't right. She does seem nervous. Why won't she let him check the glass?" The millionaire turned back to the girl. "Would you swear on your family that you are telling the truth?" he asked. His voice was low, but every ear in the room caught his words. The poor girl's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I swear, sir, I have no reason to lie. I wouldn't risk everything for nothing. I swear I saw it." Her voice rang with sincerity. Shaking but honest, the crowd went quiet again. Waiting for the next move, the bride's face darkened. Her hand slipped from his arm as her eyes darted to the glass, then back at him. "Don't you dare believe her," she hissed under her breath. But it was too late. His trust had been shaken. The doubt had already taken root. The millionaire placed the glass gently on the table. His eyes scanned the hall, his voice clear. "If she is lying, it will be proven, but if she is telling the truth..." His words trailed off, heavy with meaning. The bride's perfect world began to crumble in that moment. The guests were no longer smiling at her beauty or admiring her charm. They were watching her closely, searching her face for cracks. Suspicion replacing admiration. The poor girl stood small and trembling. But in that grand hall, she had managed to shift the spotlight entirely. It was now her honesty against the bride's reputation, truth against deception. And as the millionaire stared between the two women, the servant who risked everything to warn him and the woman he thought he loved, the celebration, began to feel less like a party and more like the beginning of a trial where trust, loyalty, and betrayal would soon be laid bare for all to see. The glass sat untouched on the polished table, its golden liquid gleaming beneath the chandeliers. Guests who only moments ago were laughing and clapping now leaned forward, their eyes wide, their conversations hushed. The celebration had shifted into something entirely different. The music had stopped, and the only sound in the vast hall was the quiet hum of whispers and the pounding heartbeat in the millionaire's chest. He stared at the glass, his reflection shining back at him in its smooth surface. Doubt crept into his mind like a shadow. He had spent months, maybe years, believing this woman by his side was his perfect match. She was elegant, admired, adored by everyone. She had been the crown jewel of his successful life, yet here he stood, torn between the woman he thought he loved and the trembling voice of a servant girl. The poor girl's words echoed in his mind. Don't drink that. They had been urgent, desperate, filled with a fear that felt too real to ignore. He remembered the way her hand had pointed. Shaking but firm, he remembered her eyes wide with honesty, as she swore on her family that she was telling the truth. The bride, still clinging to his arm, leaned close and whispered fiercely, "Darling, this is madness. Don't let her ruin our night. Look at me. I love you. You know I would never hurt you." Her voice was soft to the crowd, but he could feel the tightness in her grip, the tension in her words. He turned his head slightly, studying her face. Her beauty was undeniable. Her gown shimmered, her hair glistened under the lights. Her smile forced but convincing to anyone who wasn't looking too closely. But he noticed now the small cracks, the way her eyes darted nervously toward the glass, the faint tremble at the corner of her lips. The crowd was restless. Some guests whispered, "Why doesn't he just test the drink?" Others said, "If she's innocent, why is she so defensive?" The weight of their eyes pressed down on the millionaire. He could feel their judgment, their curiosity, their hunger for truth. The poor girl stood near the edge of the room, her tray clutched against her chest. Her legs trembled, but her eyes remained fixed on him. She had spoken her truth, and now everything rested on whether he would believe her. She knew that if he dismissed her, she would be thrown out in disgrace, but if he trusted her, the night would never be the same again. The millionaire lifted the glass slowly, not to drink but to examine. He swirled it gently, his sharp eyes catching the faintest residue clinging to the bottom, something most people wouldn't notice unless they were looking closely. His chest tightened. Was it real? Or was his mind playing tricks because of the girl's warning? "Do you see something?" one guest whispered loudly. The words rippled across the hall, making the bride stiffen. She quickly reached out, her hand covering his. "Stop this nonsense," she said, her voice brittle now. "You're embarrassing both of us. Just put it down and finish the toast." But her insistence only deepened his suspicion. He had built his empire on reading people, on knowing when a deal was wrong, when a smile hid betrayal. And in her eyes, in her forced calm, he saw something he wished he didn't. Fear. He looked back at the girl. "If you are wrong," he said carefully, his voice carrying through the hall, "you will lose everything. You know that, don't you?" The girl nodded quickly, her voice steady though her body shook. "Yes, sir, I know, but I'd rather lose everything than stay silent and let you drink that." Her words hit him like a blow. The courage in her voice, the certainty in her eyes. It was not the voice of a liar. It was the voice of someone who had nothing but still risked what little she had for the sake of truth. The bride's hand slipped from his arm, her knuckles white as she clenched her fist by her side. "She's lying," she spat, her composure cracking. "She's trying to destroy us because she envies us. Look at her. Do you really believe a poor servant over me?" The guests gasped at her tone. It was no longer polished, no longer sweet. Her mask was slipping and everyone saw it. The millionaire's chest rose and fell heavily. His mind spun with doubt and disbelief. One part of him still clung to the image of the woman he thought he knew, the woman he had wanted to build a life with, but another part, the sharper, instinctive part, told him the servant's warning carried weight. The hall was silent, waiting for his choice. The bride's eyes burned into him, demanding loyalty. The poor girl's gaze pleaded for him to see the truth. He stood caught between two worlds, the glittering lie of luxury and the raw, trembling honesty of a girl with nothing. He lowered the glass again, his decision not yet spoken, but the doubt clear in his eyes, and in that moment, the celebration was no longer a party but a storm that would soon break and expose everything hidden beneath the glittering surface. The silence in the hall grew heavier, as if every chandelier above carried the weight of secrets. The millionaire lowered the glass completely now, placing it on the table beside him with deliberate care. His decision not to drink had already sent a wave of unease through the crowd. Guests leaned toward one another, whispering in sharp, curious tones. The bride's smile had vanished. In its place was a thin, tight expression she couldn't quite control. Her fingers twisted the edge of her gown, her eyes darting between the glass and her fiancé. She tried to recover to smooth her voice. "Darling, this has gone too far. People are watching. They're laughing at us. Let's end this foolishness and continue with our celebration." But her words lacked conviction, and the guests weren't laughing. They were watching her too closely now. Some of them murmured, "Why doesn't she just let the drink be tested?" Others whispered, "She looks nervous. She wasn't like this before." The millionaire turned his gaze toward the poor girl again. She still stood near the edge of the hall, her tray pressed tightly to her chest. Her face was pale, her hands shook, but her eyes never wavered. She looked as though the whole world could collapse on her. Yet she wouldn't step back. That quiet bravery stirred something deep in him. "Bring the head waiter," the millionaire said suddenly. His voice was calm but carried the weight of authority. Immediately, staff members hurried out. Within moments, the head waiter arrived. "Looking nervous as the guests shifted in their seats, sir," the man asked respectfully, bowing slightly. The millionaire gestured toward the untouched glass. "Take this and have it checked right now. I want to know exactly what's inside." Gasps rippled through the room. The bride's eyes widened. She reached for his arm again. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her tone sharp, her charm completely gone. "Are you seriously humiliating me in front of everyone because of a servant's nonsense?" But her outburst only made things worse. Guests whispered louder, some shaking their heads. "Why doesn't she want it tested? If she's innocent, why is she fighting so hard?" The millionaire's eyes, sharp and cold now, fixed on her. "If there's nothing to hide," he said slowly, "then there is nothing to fear." Those words pierced through the hall like a blade. The bride froze, her lips pressed tightly together. The mask she had worn so perfectly for months was slipping faster now. The head waiter carefully lifted the glass, holding it as though it were fragile. The guest leaned forward, straining to see. The poor girl's chest rose and fell quickly, her fingers gripping the tray so tightly it left marks in her skin. Minutes felt like hours as the waiter stepped out with the glass. The hall buzzed with quiet tension. Some guests pulled out their phones, whispering updates to friends. Others just stared at the bride with suspicion in their eyes. The bride, realizing the shift, tried once more to salvage her image. She forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow. "This is absurd, truly. All of you are letting a silly girl control the mood of this evening. My darling, you know me. You know I love you. This is just a ridiculous scene." She leaned close, her voice lowering to a desperate whisper. "Please don't do this. You'll regret embarrassing me like this," but the millionaire didn't answer her. His jaw tightened. His eyes stayed on the doors where the waiter had gone. When the waiter finally returned, the entire hall held its breath. His face was pale, his steps slow. He placed the glass carefully on the table and bowed his head. "Sir, we had it tested quickly. There is a substance inside. It is not part of the drink." The crowd gasped. Shocked voices filled the hall. "Poison? Something dangerous? Could it be true?" The bride's face drained of color. She staggered back a step, shaking her head violently. No, this is a mistake. It's a lie. They're lying," she cried out. Her voice cracked, her polished elegance gone. The millionaire's chest tightened, his hands trembled slightly as he looked at her. "Why?" he asked softly, his voice breaking. "Why would you do this?" But she didn't answer him. Instead, her eyes darted toward the exit. Her breathing quickened, sweat rolled down her temple. Guests whispered louder now, some standing in shock, others staring at her as though she were a stranger. The poor girl stepped forward timidly, her voice quiet but firm. "I told you, sir, I saw her. I couldn't stay silent. I had to warn you." The millionaire's eyes softened as he looked at the girl for the first time. He truly realized how much courage it had taken for her to speak out in a room where no one would have believed her. The bride, meanwhile, lashed out, her voice trembling with fury. "She's lying. She's trying to ruin me. Don't believe her!" But her words rang hollow now. Too many eyes had seen her mask crack. Too many whispers filled the air. The truth had begun to unfold piece by piece. And though the final revelation had not yet come, everyone in that glittering hall knew that the bride's carefully constructed image was collapsing. The perfect fairy tale had been poisoned, not just in the glass but in the heart of the celebration itself. And as the millionaire stood there, shaken but still strong, he realized that the poor girl's warning had saved not just his life, but his dignity, his future, and perhaps even his soul. The atmosphere inside the hall had completely changed. Moments ago it had been a place of joy, clinking glasses and sweet music. Now it felt heavy, like a courtroom where everyone waited for the final judgment. The glass of poisoned drink sat in plain sight, no longer glittering with charm but glowing like evidence of betrayal. The millionaire's chest rose and fell as he turned slowly toward his bride. His eyes, once filled with admiration for her, now burned with a mix of anger and disbelief. The woman he thought he loved, the woman he had planned to marry, stood trembling beside him, her perfect smile long gone, her face pale. "Tell me the truth," he said, his voice low but sharp. "Did you do this?" The hall fell into a suffocating silence. Everyone leaned forward, waiting. The bride's lips parted. Her eyes flickered nervously from the glass to his face. "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "Of course not. You think I would ever harm you? I love you. This is madness." Her voice was loud, almost shrill, but it lacked the softness, the grace she always carried. Guests exchanged doubtful glances. They had seen her mask slip, they had heard her fury earlier. Her denial now seemed weak. The poor girl, still standing near the edge of the room, tightened her grip on her tray. Her heart raced, but she didn't look away. She had already risked everything to speak once. Now she knew the truth needed to be forced out. She whispered, just loud enough for people near her to hear. "She's lying. She knows she's lying." The whisper spread like wildfire, carried from table to table until the whole hall seemed to echo with it. The millionaire's hands clenched at his sides. "Then explain," he demanded, his voice rising. "Why was something in my glass? Why did the waiter confirm it? Why would this girl lie for nothing?" The bride's eyes darted again, her body shifting nervously. She tried to stand tall, but her trembling betrayed her. "I don't know," she snapped, her voice breaking. "Maybe she planted it herself. Maybe she's trying to trap me." The crowd gasped. Several people shook their heads. "Why would a poor servant risk everything for that?" Someone whispered. "She has no reason, but the bride does. Money, wealth, power," another guest said under their breath. The millionaire's face hardened. His jaw tightened. His fiancée's words stabbed at his trust, not because he believed them, but because they showed how desperate she was becoming. "Enough," he said, his voice thunderous now. "You accuse her, but it doesn't make sense. She gains nothing. He stopped, his eyes piercing into hers. "You gain everything if I'm gone." The bride's face twisted. Her mask cracked fully now. Her eyes blazed with anger. "You don't understand," she hissed. Her voice was low, but it carried in the silence of the hall. "You think this is about love? About happiness? It's always been about control, about what's mine." Gasps shot through the room. Some women covered their mouths. Men shook their heads in disbelief. The fairy tale image of the perfect bride shattered into pieces right before their eyes. The poor girl stepped forward timidly, her voice trembling but firm. "I told you the truth, sir." "I saw her," she said again, this time louder. Her eyes met the millionaire's, filled with sincerity. "I couldn't let you drink that, even if it meant being thrown out." The bride turned on her, her face twisted with rage. "You little rat," she shouted, her voice raw. "Do you know what you've done? Do you know who you're speaking against? I will destroy you." The hall erupted. Guests murmured louder, some shouted, "Enough!" Others called for security. But the millionaire raised his hand, silencing the room again. He turned fully to his fiancée, his voice calm but deadly serious. "You've revealed yourself. You've shown everyone here who you really are." He paused, his eyes cold. "And it's not the woman I loved." Her eyes widened, for the first time filling with real fear. She reached for him, her voice desperate now. "Wait, listen, I didn't mean, please." "Don't do this to me in front of them. We can fix this." But he stepped back, his face stern. "No," he said firmly. "The only thing broken tonight was trust, and trust cannot be fixed." The guests applauded softly, not out of joy but out of respect for his courage. The poor girl lowered her eyes, tears welling, not because she was sad, but because she had witnessed truth win over lies. The bride screamed suddenly, her voice filled with fury. "You'll regret this. All of you will." She tried to push past the guests, but security stepped forward swiftly, surrounding her, her struggles, her shouts. Her desperate attempts to defend herself all fell flat against the heavy silence of the truth now laid bare. The millionaire stood still, breathing heavily. His heart ached with betrayal, but he also felt relief. He had escaped a trap, not because of his own wisdom, but because of the courage of someone he least expected. And as the bride was escorted out, her shouts fading into the distance, the millionaire turned once more to the poor girl. Their eyes met, and in that moment he realized something profound. Sometimes, truth doesn't come from the powerful or the wealthy. It comes from those who have nothing to gain and everything to lose. The confrontation was over, but its echoes would linger in the walls of that hall forever. The heavy doors of the hall had barely closed behind the guards who escorted the bride when the whispers began. The guests, stunned and unsettled, leaned into each other, voices rising with speculation. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others looked as though they had seen a ghost. What had just happened? How could a night of joy and love twist so sharply into betrayal? The millionaire remained standing in the center of the hall, his hands resting on the table where the poisoned glass still sat, untouched but forever stained with its secret. His face was pale but strong, his eyes sharp. He was no stranger to betrayal. Business rivals had tried to trick him before, but betrayal from the woman he had chosen to marry cut deeper than any business loss ever could. "Tell us the truth," one of the older guests said firmly. Breaking the silence, what was her plan? The poor girl hesitated, but then she stepped forward again, her voice trembling yet steady. She slipped something into the glass. "I saw it, I thought maybe it was nothing, but the way she looked at you, like she was waiting, I knew it wasn't right." She paused, her hands clutching the tray to stop them from shaking. "She wanted you to drink it." I don't know what would have happened next, but it wasn't good. The room stirred again. Gasps filled the air, followed by anger. She tried to harm him? For what? For money? The millionaire closed his eyes for a moment. His heart hurt not only from the betrayal but from the clarity that now struck him. All the little signs he had ignored, her obsession with contracts, her interest in his assets, the way she asked about his health a little too often, how she avoided questions about the future beyond wealth and luxury, suddenly fit together like pieces of a puzzle he had refused to see. When the guards returned, one of them whispered something into his ear. His face tightened further. He turned back to the crowd, his voice firm. They found vials hidden in her room. The hall erupted. Cries of shock, disbelief, and outrage echoed under the chandeliers. Some guests covered their mouths in horror. Others muttered angrily, "So it was true all along. She was planning this." The poor girl's eyes widened. She had suspected, but hearing confirmation made her knees weaken. Still, she stood firm. The truth was coming to light. The millionaire looked out across the hall, his voice strong. "She never loved me, not once. This was never about love, it was about power. About greed. She wanted my name, my wealth. And when she thought she could take it without me, she planned to do so." His words hung in the air like fire, each one searing the memory of what had been uncovered. Guests murmured, shaking their heads. "We thought she was perfect. She fooled us all." The millionaire turned his gaze back to the poor girl. "And if not for her," he said, his voice softening, "I would never have known tonight. She saved me." The girl lowered her head, her cheeks burning. She had never been praised by someone powerful, never been looked at with gratitude instead of dismissal. She wanted to cry, not out of sadness but out of the strange, overwhelming feeling of finally being seen. Meanwhile, whispers about the bride's true self continued to spread. Guests recalled moments, how she often avoided deep conversations, how she changed the subject whenever someone spoke of family or responsibility, how her laughter was always a little too rehearsed. Now in hindsight, everything made sense. The truth was no longer hidden, her beauty, her charm, her carefully crafted face, all of it had been a mask, and once it slipped, the world saw her not as a glowing bride but as a schemer. The millionaire, though pained, stood tall. He realized that he had been blinded by appearances, by the sparkle of perfection, but the poor girl's courage had shown him something deeper. True character, he whispered to himself, is revealed not in beauty, but in truth. The guests applauded softly, this time not for a toast or a performance, but for the strength it took to confront lies. Their claps echoed like a judgment, confirming the end of the bride's reign of deception. The poor girl wiped her eyes quietly. She had not come that night to be a hero. She had only come to earn a small wage to take home. Yet fate had placed her in the center of a storm, and her honesty had saved a man's life. And as the hall slowly settled, the millionaire knew this night would never be forgotten. Not by him, not by the guests, and certainly not by the girl who had dared to shout the words that changed everything. The revelation was complete. The bride's true face, ugly with greed, stripped of charm, was revealed for all to see. And the fairy tale that had begun with lights and laughter ended with truth, hard and undeniable.